We talk a lot about the complex history of race in the U.S., especially, for African Americans.
Right. It's a story many are familiar with.
But there's this other narrative, maybe less visible, about how racial lines were actively manipulated, and it hit Native American communities really hard.
Yeah, and what's really striking is how specific people, individuals, really drove these changes. Today, we're looking at one key figure, Walter Plecker.
Exactly. Walter Plecker, he was a physician, and importantly, the registrar of Virginia's Bureau of Vital Statistics from 1912 to 1946. Seems like just a bureaucratic job, right?
Uh-huh. On the surface.
But stick with us, because this is where it gets really significant. In this deep dive, we want to unpack how Plecker, really driven by eugenics and, frankly, white supremacy, how he fundamentally messed with the racial identity of Native Americans in Virginia and even beyond. Our sources today really lay out this targeted manipulation quite clearly.
And it's crucial to get that Plecker's actions weren't just random. They stemmed from a very particular belief system.
That's right. The sources show his core conviction was this need to preserve what he saw as white racial purity.
Right. He thought it was essential for social order, for progress, whatever that meant to him.
And that belief shaped everything he did in that role.
Now, if we think bigger picture, Plecker was a big proponent of the one-drop rule.
Yeah, the idea that anyone with even a tiny bit of African ancestry was classified as black. We talk about that rule a lot regarding its impact on African Americans.
Absolutely. It was a cornerstone of segregation, of Jim Crow.
But here's the twist, the part that often gets missed. Plecker took that exact same thinking and weaponized it against Native Americans.
Which brings us to the core of it. How did he do that? How did he apply it? Well, according to our sources, his argument was basically that Native Americans in Virginia weren't, a distinct racial group anymore.
He claimed they were mixed.
Yes, specifically mixed with black ancestry. That was his key assertion.
So it wasn't just about a black-white binary for him. He was actively trying to erase the unique identity of Virginia's tribes by just lumping them into the category of black. It's kind of staggering when you think about it, basically using paperwork to legislate a whole group out of their identity.
And the consequences were devastating, obviously. This reclassification meant immediate discrimination, marginalization.
So they were treated as black in a segregated state, facing all those injustices.
Exactly. But also denied any recognition or resources based on their actual tribal heritage. A double blow.
And it didn't stop at paperwork, did it? He went further.
Oh, much further. He actively worked to stop marriages between white people and Native Americans.
And the sources mentioned truly extreme measures.
Yes, including forced sterilization of Native American women who were married to black or mixed-race men.
Wow. That's where you really see the intersection of eugenics, white supremacy, and this direct assault on reproductive rights.
Absolutely. It was about controlling populations, controlling who could reproduce, all to maintain this idea of racial purity. It's deeply disturbing.
And the broader impact on Native communities, it must have been immense.
Profound. We're talking forced displacement people having to move to escape the system.
Assimilation pressures, too, I imagine.
Intense pressure to just blend into white or black society, leading to the loss of culture, language, that connection to who they fundamentally were as indigenous people.
Can we look at a specific example? The Rappahannock tribe.
Yes, the Rappahannock are a really clear case documented in the sources. They actually had official state recognition back in the 19th century. They were acknowledged as a distinct tribe.
Okay, so they had established recognition.
They did, but then Plecker's policies came into full force.
And they were reclassified.
Officially reclassified as colored or black by the state. And this wasn't just semantics. It meant losing access to resources, losing that specific recognition they were due as a Native American tribe.
It effectively wiped their history clean, at least in the state's official view.
Precisely. And Plecker wasn't just some isolated figure in Virginia.
No, he was part of a bigger movement, right? The eugenics movement.
Very much so. He was a prominent voice nationally. His ideas were, respected in those circles.
The sources link him to other well-known eugenicists.
Yeah, figures like Margaret Sanger, Madison Grant. It shows his ideology resonated within that wider influential network at the time.
So his thinking had reach.
It definitely did. And you can even see echoes, maybe indirectly, in federal policies later on.
Like the Indian Reorganization Act.
Well, the IRA of 1934 is complex, but while it had some positive aims, it also contained assimilationist undercurrents that sort of aligned with the broader ideology. Plecker represented this idea of managing or reshaping Native identity.
It just underscores so clearly how race isn't biological, it's socially constructed.
Absolutely. Plecker is a prime, if horrifying, example of how power can be used to literally write people into or out of existence, racially speaking, to uphold a system of oppression.
But the story doesn't end there, does it? There's been pushback.
Yes, thankfully. What's really important, and the sources highlight this, is the resilience and the ongoing fight by these Native communities.
They're challenging Plecker's legacy.
Actively challenging it.
Yeah.
Fighting for recognition, for sovereignty, for the right to define themselves.
And the Rappahannock tribe. They had some success recently.
A major success. As the sources note, they successfully petitioned and regained state recognition in 2018.
Wow. After all that time.
Yeah, a really powerful moment of reclaiming their identity and correcting that historical injustice, at least on the state level.
That victory really drives home why understanding this history is so important now.
It really does, because if you recognize how racial categories were manipulated back then.
It helps you see how systems might still be operating unfairly today.
Exactly. It pushes us to look critically at current power structures and work towards, a society where identity is actually respected, not imposed by the state or anyone else.
So wrapping this up, the clear takeaway is just how damaging Walter Plecker's actions were.
Deeply damaging and long-lasting.
Driven by white supremacy, by eugenics, his manipulation of racial identity had just devastating consequences for Native Americans in Virginia and beyond.
Which leaves us with a pretty big question to think about, kind of echoing James Baldwin.
Okay.
Now that we've faced this piece of history, the specific manipulation, what are the ongoing ways, maybe the less obvious ways, that racial categories and power dynamics are still shaping things?
Still defining people, still creating inequality.
Right. And what's our responsibility, yours and mine, everyone listening, what's our responsibility to keep examining that and try to address those legacies?